Hello and welcome to Gin and TARDIS, a spin-off from the Doctor Who show. I'm Dave.
I'm Richard.
I'm Rob.
And today we are about to start watching the Day of the Daleks as voted for by you listeners, and indeed we did a separate poll up on X to confirm should we watch the original or the special edition, and I'm not upset to say we are watching the original.
Yes, so Pertwee only murders one Oberon.
Fundamentally, Doctor Who fans are extremely conservative.
Gents, thank you for coming along. Unfortunately, Mark can't be with us today, but that's all right. It's always hard to align 4 diaries, especially when the 3 of you all have nearly adult kids.
Yes.
Shows how long we've all known each other.
Yes.
Yeah, well, look, it does, because we were all hanging around as single bachelors back in the day, so it has been a while. Gentlemen, you looking forward to Day of the Daleks?
Very much so. I haven't watched this for quite a while.
Yeah, likewise.
No, I'm really looking forward to this. This is potentially a great watch, yes.
Yes, and look, I think it's hard to go wrong with John Pertwee. So
That is true. It is a very good era. We'll have a lot to chat about. Now, before we get down to it, we have got a lot going on in Doctor Who fandom at the moment. There are continuing rumours about what's going to happen with the show, and I know that Rob, that is the Doctor Who show's Rob, did do a bit of a one-off piece on that news a couple of weeks ago. But before we get diving in, there are more and more growing rumours about the possible return of missing episodes. We covered a lot of this on the last monthly show, but things are continuing to evolve, and it's possible something's going to happen before we get to our next monthly show. So just to be very topical, I just want to go around the room and say, do you think something's going to come of all these rumours? Do you think we'll get something for the anniversary? And if so, what episodes, and I know none of us know anything, but just gut feeling, what episodes do you think we might get? Rob?
So, having followed Film is Fabulous for quite some time and looked at their social media feed and listened to some interviews with the principals involved, they're a bunch of straight shooters who are in it for the right reasons. And when I say in it, they're in it to find, collate, restore episodes, obviously, of television. But, I mean, clearly their main thing is film. That was the initial inspiration. So when they say that they are dealing with collectors and their intent is to, collate the entire collection, and then if there's anything found, we will return it to the rights holders, I believe them.
Yep.
So when they say that we have collectors in scope, in their field of vision, who have episodes of Doctor Who, I believe them. Now, in terms of, do I think we will get anything for the anniversary, which is the end of November, I personally don't believe so, simply because, as they said in their last podcast, on the Missing Episodes podcast, the person that they were dealing with dropped dead, and that made everything much more harder or more involved. Probate, etc., etc.
He died in intestate, didn't he? I think
Yes,
so.
exactly.
Yes.
So the collection apparently is like 10,000 films, if that's the one that they're talking about, so that'll be quite a while, I think. As to what could be in it, I mean, you see all these lists that are on the internet, on social media. They're all rubbish, okay, people?
Yes.
They are all rubbish. They are. We've suddenly gone back to the Omni Rumor in 2013, where lists were flying around thick and fast. They were rubbish as well, as it turned out. So if you see a list on social media, ignore it. I think at this stage, based on what Film is Fabulous has said, probably 1, maybe 2 episodes. And if I'm going to be realistic, it's possibly going to be a Hartnell, simply on the stats. He had a wider sales around the world at that time. What story? I mean, if we're lucky with the rabbit ears up in the air, maybe Reign of Terror perhaps is what I'm probably thinking, simply because it was early, there were more sold. DMP, for instance, which we'd all love to, I just think it's not really likely. So Hartnell, Reign of Terror episode, and probably 1 or 2 at this time. But, the Film is Fabulous is on the ball, and they're doing the right thing, and in months and years to come, maybe there'll be even more.
Very good.
Richard?
That is a very good summation, Rob. I don't know that I can add a lot to that. Look, I'm in much the same boat. I probably haven't followed it quite as closely as you have, but I think there are enough credible people now making comments that clearly, look, there is probably some stuff to come back. Like you, I don't think it's going to be a motherlode. I think what was being used, what was it? It was more than a few, but less than many, I think is the phrase that seems to be consistently used. So look, that might maybe give us 4 or 5, perhaps, if we're lucky. I don't think there'll be anything come back for the anniversary. I think that's probably too short a time frame. Maybe anniversary 2026, perhaps, but I don't think for this year. In terms of what, like you, I'm probably the opinion the stats would probably suggest early Hartnell. I would probably prefer it to be the later Hartnells. I think, or all the early Troughtons, I think, if it was my choice. But I suspect it will probably be just random episodes. I don't think we're going to get all of Marco Polo in some collection or whatever. And look, I've seen some of the lists and stuff as well. The consistent ones seem to be Space Pirates and I think the Smugglers seem to be the two that are on most of the lists I've seen.
That's because fans are masochists, so
I reckon it'd be pretty cool to see the Smugglers. I don't know about the Space Pirates, but
exactly.
But yeah, I suspect it will be more just sort of orphaned episodes of things, most likely. But very exciting news, and look, hopefully, yeah, we get some good news soon.
Yes, I did message Mark and ask for his answer to these questions.
Oh, yes.
And got a very broad, it's too complicated to be announced quickly, and
Yes.
he's just happy for anything to come back. So that's good. Look, I'm kind of agree with you. Look, I don't think we'll get anything back for the anniversary. Could there be an announcement that something has been acquired for the anniversary that is yet to be released? Look, I don't think it's impossible.
Imagine the imagine the gnashing of teeth and everything that'll engender.
Look, it's possible, but yes, like you, I think it's unlikely. As I said during our monthly show, I think the ones that I consider most likely are the ones we know at some point did exist and went walkabout. So that's your 10th Planet 4, it's your Galaxy 4 1, and it's your Daleks Master Plan 4.
Yeah.
There has been a bit of smoke and heat around Marco Polo in the last couple of weeks online. Like you say, Rob, it's almost certainly based on absolutely nothing, but as that's in my top 10 all-time stories, I'll just hope that it could be Marco Polo. But look, ladies and gentlemen, that is an update before our next monthly episode in about 2.5 weeks' time. We'll see if we've got any news on the other side of the anniversary then. But for now, we're going to watch Day of the Daleks, and we'll have our comments after some gin and tonics and after this time jump. And we're back. That was
Yes.
Day of the
It
Daleks.
certainly was.
That was very good.
So we'll start off just as we always do with these Gin and TARDISes, just by talking about our memories walking in. Richard, what about you?
As I said at the top, I haven't seen this for quite a while. I think the last time would have been when the special edition DVD came out. There were cinema screenings. I got a ticket to one of them. The original version we've just watched there, yeah, that would be a long time ago. I think we'd be talking probably VHS days, I think.
And what were your memories of it? What were your impressions of it?
I really enjoyed it. My memory was it was a little slow. It's still fairly obvious that there are only 3 Daleks. They do some quite innovative shots, particularly during the final battle, to make it look like there are more. No, I thought that was really good. There's some quite, we were talking about it while we were watching it, there's some quite innovative direction.
Yes.
And that through it. It's probably got better, I think, actually, as it went on. I think the first part, there was quite a lot happened in the first part, but I think the story did ramp up quite gradually as we went across it. But no, it was great.
What are your memories, Rob?
Well, I certainly, the last time I watched it would have been when the special edition DVD came out, and prior to that it would have been when it was, I suppose, repeated ad nauseum on the ABC on telly.
Yeah.
I mean, my recollection of it as when I was younger was it's a Dalek story and it's got the Doctor in it and all that sort of thing, so that was quite exciting, and it's actually good to have seen it again through much older adult eyes. Yeah.
That echoes a lot of what I was thinking. This was one of the early VHS releases to come out.
Yep.
And as a result, we may have had a illegally dubbed copy when I was a kid. So this was one that I saw quite a bit when I was a kid, never mind that it was repeated as well. I've got to admit, my memories from being a boy watching this is that of all those sort of early Dalek stories, this was the boring one.
They're not in it heaps, really.
They're not in it heaps, and compared to something like Death to the Daleks, which is just, that is just catnip for a 10-year-old fan. Even Planet of the Daleks, there's aliens, there's jungles, there's Daleks. This was sort of the boring one. Watching it now, I agree with everything you said, Rob. That was a surprisingly adult story.
Yes.
I can absolutely see why it didn't land with me much when I was 8. But the older I am now, there's some context I think we can explore in a moment. The more that hits, and I found that really did hit quite well. I agree with what you said as well, Richard. Watching part 1, I've sort of gone, okay, they've done a lot. It looks good. We've got different time zones. The Daleks are actually in it before the cliffhanger, which surprised me. But you've got Ogrons, you've got Daleks, you've got International War, you've got Ghost, you've got time travel.
Yep.
All of that in about the first 15 minutes. But it's really only in the second half that you start to get that sense of pacing and adventure. And by the time you get to part 4, it actually is quite pacey, and the stakes are quite real.
Yep.
So they're the big picture. What do you want to drill down on?
I want to zero in on Aubrey Woods as the controller, who it's been pointed out in the past by other reviews, but he's really a central role in this, I think, as someone who comes from a family of quislings, as the Doctor infamously says. And this is where I think we get to the sort of the more adult side of things, where he has been raised in an environment of privilege where he believes what he's doing is helping the surviving humans, where in actual fact he's more a facilitator of exploitation.
and keeping himself safe. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, but I think he's self-aware enough to know by the end that the Doctor's way is the solution to the entire problem.
Yes, well, he clearly knows, he's about to be exterminated, so, yeah.
Yeah, but I had a sense sort of, with his willingness to speak up to the Daleks, that he wasn't entirely necessarily happy with the whole situation.
No.
He was doing his best.
No. He's just doing his job.
Just following orders.
So there's a couple of things there that I certainly wanted to talk about. I agree with what you said about Aubrey Woods' performance. I'd forgotten a lot of both the subtlety and also the charm. I sort of had that memory of him, particularly that part one version where he's got the really painted face, and there's a lot of talking very carefully to the dark, and I sort of remember that, but actually there's a lot of real charm. Miss Grant, I'm here to look after you.
Once the facade drops, absolutely.
Yeah, and also just those moments of when the Daleks are giving him his orders, and you can see his eyes are saying, you are a bunch of pricks and I hate you. But then the steel of, well, my job is too. And I guess in his mind, his rationale being, if he doesn't get those quotas up, if he doesn't deliver, well, more people will suffer, more people will die. And I think that's the context that landed for me a lot more now than it ever has before. And I'm thinking about this a lot lately with the context of this era of Doctor Who. We are now getting to a point where, for us as an audience in 2025, 9/11 is 24 years ago. For the people making Day of the Daleks and watching Day of the Daleks, the end of World War II was, 27, 28 years ago. So it's now getting to a comparable sort of stage. And just understanding that, not the kids watching, but the production team and the parents of the kids watching this story, their memories of World War II would be as strong, if not stronger, as our memories of 9/11.
Plus you'd been through the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis, and indeed, look, tensions were starting to ramp up again around that time. We see it in other Doctor Who stories.
Yeah, so that feeling, this must have been quite real, and that idea of being a kid and knowing that England could be occupied would be really interesting. But as I become an adult, I've also appreciated a lot more what occupation really meant. I've commented to other people after I went to Eastern Europe a couple of years ago and spent quite a few weeks going through places like Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, Romania, places like that. For us here in Australia, and I think for the UK, World War II is really sort of, Dunkirk, the Blitz, D-Day, and the victory. But you go to places like, not so much Paris, France has their own issues that we can talk about, but you go to places like Poland, and the idea of those 4 or 5 years of Nazi occupation are a completely different experience to what we get. And I think that is really echoed here. But also that sense, and you do get that with Patang in France and the like, of, well, what do you do when you're occupied? We'd all like to think that we're the guerrillas out there just risking life or limb to betray them, or are you perhaps more like the controller of 117 who's doing his job but on the sly, maybe trying to help them a little bit? Or do you take the regional controller's position and go, well, they're going to wipe us all out if we don't cooperate, so I guess by cooperating we can do it. And just to sort of finish up this little bit of a spiel from me, this year at the Scandinavian Film Festival, I saw 2 Norwegian movies, one of which was called Quisling, and was actually about the downfall of Quisling and his subsequent trial, which I believe is now on streaming services, and if you're interested, it's very, very good. But another one was called Number 24, which was all about the Norwegian resistance during the Nazi occupation of Norway. And they both give very different perspectives on how that really worked. And I just saw so much of that echoed here, and there's a real depth through to that bastard at the end who betrays the controller, and he's just out for himself. He's just like, right,
absolutely,
this is the power structure, this is how I get into it. And then you get underneath Aubrey Woods is sort of doing the, well, this is the power structure, and here's how I can make the best of it, through to the guerrillas who are just like, well, I may end up dead, but at least I'm trying.
Yes.
None of that I got as a kid. None of that I got as a kid. You've just got goodies, baddies, guys with guns, Daleks. But this was really intelligent, I thought anyway.
Well, and it demonstrates how a certain version of Doctor Who can appeal when the production team is, on song, can appeal to the kids and it can appeal to the adults. As you were saying, Dave, the adults watching this and making this lived through total war between 39 and 45 and a real era of rising tension in the 30s and after World War II.
And then in the 60s.
And the 60s, of course. So, again, you're a kid, you're there for the monsters and the action, but as an adult, you can pick up on the subtleties of the script and the performances. Going to today, even though we are a post-9/11 generation, you have a generation of people who, watched the invasion of Iraq from afar. They didn't have to make any sacrifices like the people who made this. So I tend to think that the modern audience today and the modern makers of television have no idea really or capacity to make a show or a story like what we've just watched. It would be, in the current version of events, a more superficial, more colourful, with less depth to it.
I was about to say, it'd probably
because they
have
haven't
a
lived through
much
that sort of
simpler
thing
message.
and had to make those sort of sacrifices, and they've done it from afar. We don't have a situation where people are conscripted to fight. Everyone is watching the events in Ukraine, for instance, from afar. All of us, and it has no real impact on our lives. Whereas the people making this would have served in World War II, would have been under attack, would have hidden themselves in the underground during blitz attacks.
And after that, grown up with rationing.
Yes.
All those sort of things. I mean, rationing here finished in 49, I think.
Yeah, and in Britain it was still well into the 50s. So
Yeah.
And then, of course, they've lived under the shadow of the bomb all their lives, effectively, since World War II. So I think that colours everything that they've put in. I mean, I might be over-egging it, but I feel that it does show itself in this particular story.
There's a certain realism with the way that it's done, which is an extraordinary thing to say about a story about time-travelling gorillas and aliens. But I was contrasting, as we were watching it, the way that some of the current affairs events are done. Now, I have a bit of time for what RTD1 did with his whole, we're going to show you the alien invasion via the news and all the rest of that. I get that. And they do a bit of that here, but that moment where the Brigadier gets the
security briefing.
Briefing through, that feels very real. I don't know quite why it is, but I guess you're right. Like, for someone like Nick Courtney, he'll be sitting there going, I kind of remember what this was like.
Yes.
So there's a real realism to it. But then when we get to the actual news report that they do, where they've got Alex McIntosh,
an actual reporter.
Actual reporter, they then film the delegates arriving like a news camera, sort of, doing a fly on the wall thing. It's a completely different form of filming. So it's quite cleverly done. But I think that you're right. If you're somebody who's watching the news at 10 every night and you're seeing stuff like the Cuban Missile Crisis, the tensions between China and the Soviets that were happening, this wouldn't be that big a fantasy. Like, there would be something about this that would just go, this feels like it could be 5 years in the future.
No, and it's not even throwaway, really, either. I mean, you have the whole subplot where Styles has to actually go to China and convince the Chinese delegation. I mean, they call it Peking, but he has to go and convince the Chinese delegation to come back to the talks because they're now reluctant. And we get the reports that, troops are starting to mass on the borders and actual fighting's broken out in South America. And in Southeast Asia. So
and the brig is worried and the doctor's worried.
Yes.
Which means that we're worried.
Yes.
Exactly.
And they go to the trouble of actually hiring some Chinese actors, some African actors, and actually making it feel like an
international
situation.
Yeah.
Which reflects, Barry Letz's small L liberalism, whether you call it classical liberalism or Gladstonian liberalism, but he was a liberal in that British sense, that sense of international cooperation is very important. I mean, you get that all the way through the Pertwee era. There's always this sense that when countries work together under the auspices of something like UNIT, we are all better off than when countries go and do their own thing. I mean, that whole stuff in Clause of Access, England for the English. You do sort of see that coming through, and it is actually a proper theme of the era. Let's talk about money, because this, of course, was the big season opener for season 9.
Yes.
And it's funny, like, we sort of think of season 9 now as being, not even halfway through Doctor Who's run, but we now look at, the Doctor Who now and any series now and go, like, getting to season 9.
9 seasons,
It's a pretty big deal at the time.
It is, yes.
And they must have been feeling in the production office a sense of, we've got a 9th season. Maybe we'll get a 10th if we're really good. Could we get an 11th? There would be no sense of, that's all right, we're going to get at least 26. So they're trying to make it work. And this feels like a proper blockbuster season opener.
Well, I think it's very clear, Daleks, which immediately hooks
Tell me
viewers. Yes, exactly. And I think the story behind this one isn't that the Daleks, they sort of had a half-written Dalek story for either the end of the season or later in the season. And then, no, we want them right at the start because, you mentioned the word Daleks and it's a bit like J&T with Mary Whitehouse. You suddenly get an extra 2 million viewers.
Well, because Barry Letts is probably the first producer that really has this concept of the big opener. Terror of the Autons, he casts Roger Delgado to be the enemy, the Doctor's Moriarty, and there's lots of articles about this. This is the Doctor's new ongoing enemy.
Yep.
Tune in to find out about that. This one, he does the Daleks. Next season, he does the Three Doctors.
Exactly.
So he gets this idea of you've got to have the big season opener, which is it feels like a very modern concept. But this one has got that. But the money, like we were counting 5 or 6 Ogrons.
Yep.
Multiple guards. Unit had in
a
one
lot
shot,
of troops.
A lot of troops.
They'd obviously gone and got all those Rolls Royces to bring all the delegates in.
Yeah, they've got extras playing the delegates. They have extra soldiers come in
Yep.
for the peace conference. There's heaps of location footage, and a lot of the cast, like even the guy who plays Styles, obviously is out for location footage in that last scene. So this feels like Barry Letts, has spent some money.
This is a production team that is very confident in what it's doing. Yeah, it's very.
Yeah.
I mean, it's re-established the show a couple of years before with season 7, and it's building on that. And I look at it and I see a really confident production. I see John Pertwee is firmly ensconced in the role. I see camera work that is. I mean, we look from our vantage point here and we think, it's all primitive back in the 1970s and whatever. But there's a lot of really good, confident work going on there, and it shows on the screen. It really does.
It does. No, it's had money spent on it. As I said at the top, there's some really quite innovative direction. Particularly those fades. You see they're talking and then it pulls back through the view screen.
Yes.
Where the Daleks are suddenly watching them.
It's really arresting to see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Some of the shots of looking basically at the base of the Daleks up to who the Daleks are speaking to.
Yep.
Yes.
And then, look, I mean, you're right, Richard. It is quite clear at some points there are only 3 Daleks, and it's not helped by the fact that one of them's gold.
Yes.
So you can't sort of pretend that it's a different 3 every time. But when they first come through the tunnel, we counted 7 or 8 Daleks at that point.
We did.
Good editing work there, folks.
That's exactly right. And look, I guess with the money, you've got the Curse of Peloton coming up, which is totally studio bound. So I guess that's how you balance, and you hide that in the middle of the season. So.
Yes.
Let's talk about the man himself, John Pertwee. Any thoughts on the Doctor in this?
I get the impression he's having a good time with this. I mean, part one,
Was
he's...
that real wine he was drinking?
That's right. But you watch him in part one, he's got the cheese and the wine, and he's, clearly relaxing, taking advantage of this bloke's house.
Yes.
But he gets to do, he gets to be serious and forceful when he needs to be. Some of those exchanges he's having with the controller, he's just gently, it's not a full-on rant, it's just gently poking holes in what the controller's trying to tell him. And indeed, even when he goes in and effectively, just wins over the rebels with one conversation, I think he's in great form here.
Yeah.
It's really impressive to me. And look, I grew up with Pertwee as my favourite Doctor, and he's still number 2 now. So, I'm biased. I come into this with lots of love. But you see in this one the fun side of Pertwee, the stuff where he's just making free with the wine cellar. And, and Rob, I saw you having a very good laugh at was it a touch sardonic but not cynical?
A good human
wine. Human wine. One after my own heart. There's some fun there. The bit where he's doing don't forget to tell it to the Marines. He's having some fun there, but you're right. His morality comes across very, very strong. And his exchanges with the controller, again, I sort of remember them all being right up there at the sort of the you sir or a Quisling level. But the build up to that was much better than I was expecting. And you're right, just that slow poking of holes. And don't they like being prosperous and free? Before he sort of builds up. And then even as the controller's sort of pouring his heart out and doing the exposition, and he's just a family of Quislings. just showing that he's there. But also, I think something that, personally, I think we've lost in the Doctor in these last few years in the modern series is that sense of alienness, but also that alien perspective that it therefore gives. And that one that in all of this these conversations, whether it's Joe, the controller, the gorillas, whatever, everybody has a very local, very human, on the ground perspective. But it's the Doctor who can say, hang on, let's look at the big picture. Let's be detached from this all. And he's the one that can then pull it all together. That's a really just a powerful performance. And you're right, Richard. The scene that for me was really strong was when the gorillas rescue him from the controller, and they clearly want to execute Aubrey Woods. Like it would be like, you know, the Norwegian resistance getting their hands on Quisling. They would want to execute him. Yes. But it's the Doctor who says, no, we don't kill, we don't murder. And the Force Lord of, no, leave him.
The Daleks will do it for us.
But the gorillas just look at him and they go, I don't know what it is about this guy, but I think I need to do what he tells me. And I'm not sure that every Doctor can do that. And I think that there are several modern Doctors particularly who struggle to do that.
Yeah. There's a degree of appealing to their underlying humanity in that particular scene.
And indeed also when he's there later on, when he tells them, well, he's not going back to murder Styles, but maybe he can find another path.
Yes.
And they just willingly go along with him.
I mean, I find it interesting that Pertwee's background in acting was more light entertainment, and yet he's clearly capable of handling more deeper subjects or ideas than this, and conveying it in a convincing manner. Which I think is a real testament to his ability.
Yes, and he can take out Scott Fredericks while still having a swig of wine.
Wouldn't we all love to be able to do that?
And always goes back for his cloak.
Yes.
Let's talk about time travel. Do any future productions in TV and cinema maybe owe this story a few royalties? What do we reckon?
Did
Probably lucky Harlan Ellison wasn't involved.
Well, actually, does Harlan Ellison's story predate this? Is it a 60s story?
That's a good question.
It is a good question, actually.
Yes. Whether it was anthologised in the UK. It's the demon with the glass hand.
It is, yeah.
That's right. Let our audience look that up for themselves. But no, I mean, clearly this sort of storyline is fundamental to all
this
time travel.
Paradox type story.
Exactly, yeah. And of course, there's the philosophy and the morality behind it, of course, as well. I mean, can we change time? Can you go back in time and strangle Hitler in the crib? Yes, you can. But
it's interesting they don't touch on, though, right at the very end, because, I mean, if you do go back and you undo the murder of Styles, effectively that entire timeline, and thus all these people, effectively cease to exist.
Yeah, I'm sure physicists would say you just create a new timeline and, the Daleks still rule the world. But yeah.
Well, it's something that I think that old Who doesn't do that new Who does do well, which is explore that emotional impact of that. And I think that if you're doing this story today, one thing that would be done better is there would be that moment of reflection of, if I succeed in doing this, all of you cease to exist, as do your parents and your grandparents and everyone you knew. And then you've got the reinforcement of, yes, but that's worthwhile because whatever else happens is better. I think that is in there, but it's certainly not brought out in the way that we would necessarily expect today.
I sometimes think that perhaps the way that it was handled in this story is a more lighter touch, because sometimes modern production teams will just lay it on with a real, a trowel sort of thing.
But even as you said, Rob, they don't quite go full Genesis of the Daleks with, if you knew that a child, yada yada, could you kill that child?
Yes.
But effectively, the gorillas have made the choice. Yes, we can kill that man.
Yeah.
And again, it's the Doctor's sense of heightened morality. I was going to say alien, but I think heightened's a better word. Of, no, I can't just murder Styles because it makes your life better. There's this idea that he can't sacrifice one to save a billion. How he get on with the seventh Doctor on that equation is an interesting one. And dare I say, go back to our recent Doctor Who Show monthly episode about Cold Fusion, where the Fifth Doctor and the Seventh Doctor do clash over that.
Yes.
That different approach. But
or indeed the needs of the many necessarily of the few. Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean that again is quite moral, and again, as a kid, completely left me go.
Yeah, though I do wonder, a slightly older kid or teenager, where the Doctor actually tells everyone that you're creating your own paradox here. I mean, if you're half aware as a teenager, that him explaining that would have been quite the concept. That you've effectively created the dystopia that you're trying to solve.
Yes. Although, I suppose if you then try and work through it, it must have happened a different way at least once to actually create the scenario for them to come back and recreate it. But maybe that's your Blinderflix limitation effect in...
We'll get Capaldi explaining the bootstrap paradox.
Yes. It's just timey-wimey.
Sorry.
See, that proves my point from before.
I just hate timey-wimey used as an excuse for bad writing. Yes. But then, is the Blinderflix limitation effect any better?
I note that they didn't even try to explain that. So
No.
Well, Terence Dick says that it was an insert by him. He's just gone, that's a really good question. I'll just put in some technobabble and we can all move on. Which he was very, very good at. And you're right, Rob. Like yes, as a kid, that moment of Styles didn't cause the war, you did it yourselves. That is a oh wow moment, and that is a sort of a mind blowing twist.
Yes.
And I think particularly if you've been watching this over 4 weeks and built up to that.
That's true.
That would be very, very effective. I just don't think that necessarily it's the morality underneath it that you get.
No, fair.
And certainly as a kid, at that point it's like, that's great, but the Daleks going to exterminate someone now? So yeah, it is drier. Is it too dry or is it just dry enough?
I think
I thought it was a pretty good mix. I must admit, certainly, look, we weren't bored watching it. None of us were looking at our watches.
No, that's true.
We did say it was quite well paced, particularly in the later instalments.
Yeah, I think part one lacks a bit of action. You do get a couple of cool moments of Ogron smashing people, but it's very brief, and there is a lot of talk and a lot of explanation.
Yes.
It's good talk, and it's good explanation, but it is, I think,
it's a lot of setup.
It's a lot of setup. Yeah. And even though the Daleks do appear, they don't do anything. Let's talk about the Daleks, though. The one of the probably the biggest negative moments we had was at the end of part one. Richard, you had some thoughts as we were watching. Would you care to share with our audience?
I have to say, I had forgotten just how painful those Dalek voices were. I must admit, I would hardly ever say that Nick Briggs makes anything better, but I have to say his redone voices are an improvement on the originals. It is very slow dialogue. And it was actually quite painful to listen to in places.
And the production team clearly understood that because the next episode they speak a bit quicker.
Yes.
I think there was a bit of learning by doing.
Yeah.
So it's the end of season 4 the Daleks last appeared.
That's right.
So we've been through 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
So over 4 years since the Daleks last appeared. And clearly everyone had just forgotten how to do it. They didn't obviously hire previous voice actors.
I was about to say Peter Hawkins obviously wasn't available that week.
Or wasn't asked.
Yeah.
So yeah, they are sort of getting the hang of it. And look, it does very clearly show that this was a script the Daleks were inserted into.
Yes.
I don't think it's a problem. I think it actually works quite well.
No, you sort of get the idea probably they've commissioned it and then gone around and had a look in the prop store and sort of gone, oh, we've only got 3 of them. Oh dear.
But no, I think they get away with it more or less.
Look, they do, because in the control sequences, look, you don't need heaps of Daleks. I mean, it's just a controller and whatever.
Well, the only time you need more than 3 is on location at the end.
Yes.
Otherwise, 3 is fine.
Yes. Being nitpicky, on a big TV, you can see those props are pretty badly beaten up. Yes, and there is the one with the very obvious casters on the bottom of it, but...
But that's the blown up one, so that's obviously a cheap
But you can
trial.
also see they've got the bin liner or whatever it is around the bottom to hide the casters on the others. But
just as an aside, I do note, and this should, the makeup people, kudos to them. You notice the humans in the 22nd century, they have...
paint silver fingernails. Yeah.
And the face paint, which is that an allusion to the Dalek, the grey Daleks as well?
Maybe.
Yeah, I've always wondered, certainly as a kid, that just said to me, future-y, alien-y, something weird's going on. Yeah, I don't quite know what it's meant to be. Is it meant to be that they're sort of under some sort of mind control?
Well, that's the thing, is they're that very flat, emotionless, the
women.
technician, what's she credited as? Girl technician or whatever it is.
Yes, literally girl technician.
Welcome to the 70s.
Who's sitting there working the console. She's very flat and emotionless.
Yeah, and...
But clearly it's a choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of things that were choices I hadn't appreciated, I'd always thought that when they put together that omnibus edition, the one that I saw many, many times, the stings in there were mistakes. But watching it now, clearly the idea of having the reprise, then the sting, and then carrying on was actually a editorial choice.
Yeah. Interesting one.
It is, because people always sort of pull up things like Ambassadors of Death as doing something a bit different with the sting there, but this is clearly doing it as well, and I think it works. It's interesting, but it's funny how many people who wrote reference books and the like that we grew up with obviously probably also grew up with the compilation tape. So things that have perhaps gone down in fan legend as being mistakes actually are just from the compilation tape rather than actual mistakes.
Yes, and on the reprises, we did comment while we were watching it, the part 2 and part 3 reprises were quite long, both of them.
Yes.
So they were obviously underrunning a little bit.
Yeah, it feels like that. And the opening to the 4th episode was
quite short.
Reasonable.
And then it cuts away, actually, from the actual cliffhanger to the new action. I think that's a different edit again.
We have here gorillas. And I must admit, as a kid, not knowing the term gorilla, having gorillas and Ogron gorillas in the same story was a little bit confusing at the time. But we do have gorillas here. You made the point, Rob, when we were watching it, never actually referred to as terrorists, though.
No, the controller doesn't refer to them as terrorists, which you would think...
Well, maybe it was a little bit too relevant. I mean, we're probably not quite at the Munich Olympics, but, I mean, terrorism was really on the rise in the early 70s, so...
Yes, yeah. Well, I just thought it was interesting that they went with criminals and guerrillas, but, I mean, guerrillas, I suppose, from the 60s and, the Vietnam War and all that sort of thing, so, yeah, it was just interesting.
And we don't want our good characters to be tarnished in that way as well, which, in our terrorism, I think, as much as Richard on Spacefall, a Blake Seven podcast, we do talk about Chris Boucher's approach to terrorism and that idea of one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Yes, absolutely.
And we've explored the morality of that and reached different conclusions. I don't think Barry Letts is quite going down that path of, let's show that a terrorist can be a good guy if he's fighting the right battle.
Yes.
It would probably just been a little bit too heavy-handed for the BBC at 5:30 on a Saturday.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Now, I guess not only do we get the Daleks, we do get some new aliens.
Yes.
The Ogrons.
From the quote-unquote outer planets, but which outer planets, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, eventually we're given the name, the planet of the Ogrons.
that has that big sort of plastic bag monster living on.
When are we doing Frontier in Space?
Yes.
I was actually a lot more impressed by the Ogrons than I expected to be.
I remember they were better than I remembered them being.
Yeah, and the half masks. I mean, it's not the Draconians, but
no,
they look quite effective. They're big. They move faster than I remember them moving.
Yep.
They lope.
Yes, although you watch them when Pert was on that little three-wheel trike thing and sort of very flat tyres.
Not those tyres.
Yes, but it's some sort of lumbering along after him, but a sort of a slowed lope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they looked all right. I was neither here nor there with them.
I mean, they keep them in the background. Other than the one that sort of talks at the start, they don't really talk very much.
No.
They're just sort of there to be heavies, basically.
Yeah.
But, look, I thought they did... They were suitably alien enough to be interesting.
And Terrence Dix liked him because he's brought them back in many of his original novels. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as indeed did Gareth Roberts.
That's true, actually.
Yes.
Check out the 42 Doomsday Christmas episode for a further discussion.
So what do we think of the regulars then?
Katie Manning is very clearly well established at this point.
Yes.
And I think you can see that conception of the character as able to be a peril monkey when the script requires, but able to be resourceful when the script requires. She is actually able to escape her bonds by herself. She's the one that rescues the Doctor at one point. She does have that moment of defying the gorillas with the time machine, but she also sort of falls for the charm of Aubrey Woods because the plot needs her to. So I think that she fills her functions really well, but even when she's perhaps being naive, I don't think she loses her credibility, which is really important. I can think of some other companions that might.
Yeah. I thought, especially in the first episode, she was more there to ask questions in the traditional companion role. And I did find myself slightly irritated with the performance. I thought she was a bit just weak. But once she sort of made it to the 22nd century, it did improve. There was more interaction with, the controller. There was a different sort of relationship that was built up than, with the Third Doctor.
Well, I guess in some ways, I mean, this is going a bit beyond this story. I mean, she is really sort of the prototype, really, for what companions become in the later years of the classic show.
Yes.
You sort of have the children that sort of follow the Doctor not by choice, but because they're thrown in with him in the early ones. Zoe is probably, arguably, the only one that really breaks that trope. Liz Shaw is another scientist. But now you are really into what we know as a traditional companion who is basically there to pass the equipment and ask questions.
Yes.
And occasionally gets, something a bit more interesting to do.
I just wanted something a bit more meatier from her, at least earlier on, but it does improve.
It's not her best story, put it that way.
No.
And of course we have Unit.
Nick Courtney.
Yes.
This is a very good story for Courtney. I remember when we talked, I can't remember in what context it was, it might have been a 42 to Doomsday, we talked about the Web of Fear and how Lethbridge Stewart just absolutely loses it in part 4 of that story. He's just like, no, we're stuffed, we can't fight them, bugger all this. And this is probably as close to that as you get in the Pertwee era. And it's not that close, but that real sense of dread from him and almost losing it at a couple of points of just, there's more here going on than I can cope with.
Yes.
You get a real sense of the Brigadier's actually quite scared.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really powerful performance that I hadn't really noticed before.
No, there's clearly a lot going on. I mean, he has obviously, we don't, not expressly stated, but he has very clearly been tasked with the security for this whole most important peace conference ever type thing. And of course, he's got this other nonsense with the Doctor disappearing and whatever that's sort of annoying him, basically, in the background.
And even there's a conversation he has where he says, in the event that things get worse, we'll of course liaise with the home army or whatever it is. Yeah. And so in his mind, there's also, I think, he's starting to do that calculation of, if the world turns into a world war, well, UNIT presumably ceases to exist. It's just we're just back to being the British Army fighting for the British now.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
No, I thought that was really good. It gave him a lot to do, really, just beyond just being disbelieving of what the Doctor was showing him. I thought that was really good. And, of course, we have our friends Yates and Benton.
There was one good scene with those two. That was the bit where Joe brings out the wine and the cheese, which I thought demonstrated a lightness of touch in both actors, which I appreciated.
Yes, you get the impression Richard Franklin or Mike Yates is very much enjoying being able to stand over Benton and send him out into the night to...
Rank hath its privileges.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, look, it is a good scene for both of them. Other than that, I think they're just there to be functions of the plot.
Yes, exactly.
Really?
So, fair enough.
Would it have been more interesting if, when Benton sort of, we can't hold them, sir, we can't hold them, and then got zapped? Would that have been...
Too much for the young audience.
Yes, that's true. The trusted Sergeant Benton.
Well, a future Quisling needed to make it to the end of the Pertwee era, so...
Just very quickly, speaking of things I hadn't noticed before, the scene in part 3 where the Doctor's been interrogated and then not the regional controller, the local controller, who's obviously a double agent, is trying to convince him to, I'm with the rebels like you are. And then the controller comes in, Aubrey Woods is giving him the full, I'm a nice guy, it's really good. I hadn't noticed before that other controller just gives a really subtle just shake of the head. And you can see Pertwee actually reacts to it just going, okay.
Yeah.
So that guy's with the rebels. I should listen to him. He's saying that guy's being deceptive. Right, fine.
Yes.
I know what I'm doing. That was incredibly... Look,
was very subtle.
It's subtle enough. I've seen this 20-something times in the past, and I hadn't seen it before.
No, and again, that's that slightly adult thing, And I also, in that same scene where the Doctor has been beaten up effectively, that actor... He really gives a good performance in that. He inhabits the role of a thug.
Yes,
quite
very
well.
much so.
Quite well.
I've even given him a free sample. Yes. Richard, you do have some of your usual notes?
I do have a few notes about how this was screened. It was first screened here in Australia on the 16th of March 1973 in Sydney and Canberra. Now, this is a bit over a year after the UK, where it was screened in January 72.
It's not bad.
No, it's not too bad. These are obviously still in black and white here in Australia in 73.
So they didn't get the first colour extermination effect.
Very good. As mentioned, look, in other pre-Tom Baker stories, this is still very much the era where each state was largely responsible for its own programming. Although, at this point, Doctor Who is fairly consistently being shown on Friday nights at around sort of 6 p.m. in that early evening time slot. It debuted in April and May in other parts of the country. Here in Melbourne, it started from the 20th of April 1973, which was actually Good Friday that year.
Happy Easter.
There you go. Wasn't seen in Queensland until June. Now, Day of the Daleks is, here in Australia, it's part of a run of stories that start with the Claws of Axos, back towards the end of 1972, and went all the way through to Planet of the Daleks in 1974. So basically Season 8, Season 9 and Season 10. Less a couple of stories in one continuous run. For the record, Terror of the Autons had been shown separately as a one-off several months earlier, sort of mid-72. Now, this run ends with Planet of the Daleks because the Green Death was initially assessed with an A rating, so it couldn't be shown in a kiddie time slot.
Adults only for those in the UK.
Yes. It was slightly edited and it sort of enters the run from the late 70s. This run also omits Mind of Evil and the Demons because they are also assessed as A, so couldn't be shown, and those two don't appear until the 1986 run.
Very scary stories.
Yes, that legendary one where they showed all the Pertwees. In Australia it also skipped Inferno when season 7 was shown here again because it was deemed to be too nasty for kids. Now, in terms of, it was shown after Lassie. Lassie, and before a magazine series called Switched on Set, which was sort of like a kids' magazine program for kids, older kids and younger teenagers.
Okay.
Yep. And just one final point for the missing episode aficionados.
None in this room.
We mentioned during the last episode, the Troughton one, about the ABC school holiday repeats of Doctor Who in the afternoons. Part 4 of Day of the Daleks was shown here in Melbourne on Friday the 11th of May 1973. Starting the following Monday, which is during the school holidays, are the final Australian repeats of the Space Pirates at about 2 p.m. on weekday afternoons over the holidays.
Okay.
So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, I will say actually with the repeats, this was one of the very first Pertwees I saw because it was one of the sort of 6 or 7 that they used to have on fairly high rotation.
Yeah.
They were the ones they A, had in colour, and B, obviously hadn't been assessed as being too nasty.
Yes.
So in the late 70s, this was one of the ones that was on. They used to screen quite regularly.
Very good.
There you go.
Well, I don't have anything more to say. This has perhaps been one of our drier Gin and TARDIS episodes.
It has, actually.
Speaking of the gin,
Yes, probably should have done this at the top, but the gin for today was supplied by listener Edwin Patterson, and thank you very much, Edwin. This was a very nice drop.
yes,
It is 4 Pillars Rare Dry Gin.
well, there you go.
Yes.
Appropriate for the material.
Yes, and Edwin actually also supplied us with some Fever Tree Mediterranean tonic water.
Yes.
Which again is better than the sort of bottom shelf swept stuff we usually use. So, no, thank you very much, Edwin. That was really nice. Actually, that went down very well.
We'll see us well into 2026.
Yes.
If not 2027, that's a decent bottle.
Well, I don't know. Once Mark gets back, I reckon...
That's
Swigging from the bottle.
That's true. Look, it perhaps has been one of our drier Gin and TARDIS conversations, but I must admit I took a lot of drier stuff out of that. I think that it is a very good adventure. It's a better adventure than I remember.
Absolutely.
It's perhaps not quite as exciting as some other Dalek stories, but just, again, watching this now as an adult with a proper understanding of history and a whole bunch of other things, I took a lot more from this than I have before, and I'm really quite impressed by it.
Yeah, I'm glad that I watched it. As you say, Dave, the themes in it really resonate today, and I do appreciate the opportunity to see it again.
Yeah, look, it wasn't as much fun as Underwater Menace Part 3, but look, it was a much better story than I remembered it being.
How are these the same show?
No, it was a much better story than I remembered it being, and I really enjoyed watching that.
Fantastic. So, look, gents and Mark, in your absence, thank you for joining us here on the couch at Camp David for several Gin and TARDISes this year. It's been fun. We've always had very good feedback from the audience. This will be the last Gin and TARDIS for 2025, but we look forward to coming back, I hope, in 2026.
Yep.
We've got a few things we need to cover. We'll make that decision off mic a little bit later. I am quite keen, being the 30th anniversary of the telly movie, that we do that sometime next year.
Oh, yes.
We have had some good response at the idea of doing another pick and mix with the Hartnell eras. We might do some loose Hartnell episodes. We're due for another Davo. We're due for another McCoy. So they're probably the first few things you'll see in some order over 2026.
I think so.
But look, these are irregular because, as I said, getting diaries to align is not always easy, and it is important to do these in person. But when we can, we will. We expect to be back together for a 42 to Doomsday Christmas party at some point, Rob.
Yes, later in December, quite close to Christmas according to the calendar, but we'll see how we go with that. Yes, no, looking forward to that, and having Mark, you're not here, Mark, I'm talking to an empty chair, but Richard and Dave, of course.
He's here in spirit.
Gin spirit, I believe, so.
So much more to look out for. And of course, we have another episode of the Doctor Who show coming at the end of this month, where we'll be looking at the works of David Fisher. So yes. I need to get started on watching Stones of Blood sometime this evening.
Ooh, lucky you.
And I'm also hoping we'll have another little one-off special coming in the next couple of weeks, but we'll announce that once it's recorded.
Ooh.
So it's always been fun, gentlemen. Thank you again for your time.
No, thanks very much for having us. This has been great.
It has.
But until then, I've been Dave.
I'm Richard.
I'm Rob.
And we'll speak again next year.
rolling chrome in the cylindrical dome. Laser in my arm and I call that home. I see a time lord, I don't even stress. I level planets when I'm feeling depressed. Climbing upstairs, ha, that's old school hacks. I engage float mode, now I hover up tracks. Your primitive weapons, they don't impress me. I'm the DMV of death, wait your turn to test me. It's the day of the Daleks, so hit the deck. If you hear exterminate, it's too late, check. I'm a Gallifrey slayer with a beat so tectonic. Derelict supreme, rhymes deadly and chronic. It's the day of the Daleks, so hit the deck. If you hear exterminate, it's too late, check. I'm a Gallifrey slayer with a beat so tectonic. Derelict supreme, rhymes deadly and chronic. Got a plunger for a hand, don't laugh at my gear, cause I'll suck out your soul when you're anywhere near. My rhymes are colder than the void outside. My emotional breach, I'm crashing through pride. Cybermen glitch when they hear my track. Some torrents run home and they won't come back. Even the doctor be like, oh hell no, when I roll up dropping my extermination flow. Recalibrate, System single line, all targets located.